Race representation in tabletop RPGs. Not a good look. Not a good look at all. Some of you might be wondering, why am I saying that? Because of the how and the why of race representation in tabletop RPGs, because those things matter. The methodology and the motivation for why race representation has become this thing in tabletop RPGs. And the main reason is because this is what is going on in the culture at large. And because of that, that gets diffused down into the subcultures, which means we have to deal with it in the subculture of tabletop RPGs. They're trying to sell you a bill of goods as if these things are good, but they're not. As a matter of fact, if I was going to define and describe with one word what the methodology and motivation of race representation and how it's being done today in tabletop RPGs, if I had to describe it with one word, it would be this one: evil. Now, I might be getting ahead of myself here. I am getting ahead of myself, actually. And this might be the first time that you're coming to this channel wondering what I'm talking about. First, let me be a gentleman. I want to welcome you. This is RPG Elite. This is a place where we put the RP, the role playing, back into tabletop RPG. And how I do this is by giving you tools, tips, tutorials, and one of these videos, which is real talk about the tabletop RPG space and culture. When I talk and say it's evil, I'm saying that the motivation and the methodology is evil. And there are those of us in this culture who do this with evil intentions. In other words, yes, they are evil. But overall, everybody's evil. That's another whole philosophical point that I won't be covering here today in this video. Sometimes we do things and sometimes we do them in ignorance. Doesn't mean that they're not evil still. It's like what the Bible says. The Bible says that there are sins of the will, willful sins, and then there's sins of ignorance. But between those two, the one thing that is the same across the board, there's still sins. Now you may feel that that's kind of harsh, but we're going to prove it by looking at 3 defective, toxic traits that the methodology and motivation produces in tabletop RPGs. Just how it's being done and the why of it being done. We're going to focus on what it produces, which will be the evidence that it's evil. So let's get into the first one. Narcissism. Now, I want us all to be on the same page when it comes to this, because some people think it's one thing, some people think it's another, and we all have to be on the same page when it comes to any kind of exchange or we're talking about something. You guys know I like to lay out a definition so that we are coming from the same place, or at least you know where I'm coming from. And this is a clinical definition of narcissism from Psychology Today, and you can go ahead and click on a link in the description below of this video to read it. It's a long definition, and I'm not going to do it all at once, but let's get into the first part of it. Narcissism does not necessarily represent a surplus of self-esteem or of insecurity. More accurately, it encompasses a hunger for appreciation or admiration. A desire to be the center of attention and an expectation, oh my gosh, underline that word, of special treatment reflecting perceived higher status. Well, isn't that something? But I think this next part really nails it. Narcissism is characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance, okay, underline that, a lack of empathy for others, okay, you can underline that one as well, because of how they treat others who do not believe what they believe. in terms of race representation and all the rest of that. Let's continue. A need for excessive admiration. Well, I guess you can underline that too. And the belief that one is unique and deserving of special treatment. Oh goodness, just go ahead, circle, underline, highlight that whole paragraph because it nails it. As far as the motivation and methodology of why people focus so heavily on race representation in the culture at large, and then how that leaks down into the tabletop RPG culture. But I'm not done. We've got more. Narcissists have a prominent place in the popular imagination, and the label narcissist is widely deployed to refer to people who appear too full of themselves. Now, how is this reflected in the tabletop RPG culture? Very simply, people who push this agenda in the way that they push it and the why of why they push it, they do it because they think they have some sense of entitlement. Oh, we're owed. Oh, and if somebody isn't representing them, oh, there must be some sinister thing going on. And then that's when they start throwing out ad hominem attacks with no proof whatsoever because they have no actual argument, and for the other two defective traits that we'll talk about here in a moment. But we're still not done. There's also a growing sense that narcissism is on the rise around the world, especially among young people, although most psychological research does not support that notion. Now, this is me speculating, but you can infer from one place that the research has not caught up with the reality. And that one place where you can infer this is from social media. You see this all over the place. It's everywhere. It's about me, myself, and I. How many followers do I have? How many subscribers do I have? How much do people like my stuff? And then when they're not getting that, oh man, then they just fall apart. And that's when they ad hominem attack. Oh, it must be something else. Must be something sinister. It can't be that what you're doing nobody's interested in. Oh no, it can't be that at all. It has to be, well, it must be that, yes, there. Well, I'm not going to say that word right now. We'll get to that in a minute. There's a movie that came out last month. The name of it is Tar, and it stars Cate Blanchett. And she is a conductor. And in this one scene, which is at the beginning of the movie, now I haven't gone to see the movie, I just did my research, but it's in like the first half hour of the movie. And she's sitting in a college room talking about music and everything. And in this one part of the scene, she's sitting next to what looks like, he looks Hispanic. So she's sitting next to this Hispanic young man on the piano bench, and she's playing the piano. And they're talking about composers and the art for the art's sake, to appreciate the art, irrespective of the background and who they were and everything, the art, and if the art itself is good. And so she's sitting next to him and she's playing around, and this is what she says. I'm just going to read it straight from here. She says this: "The big question for you is, what do you think, Max?" And she's kind of playing around, right? This is what Max says. Check this out. And this is reflective of the generation today. First thing he says, he goes, "Oh, you play really well." Okay, flattery. He starts off by flattery, not even appreciating the art for the art. He can't do it. Not even respecting that for that. Can't do it, right? But then this is what he says: "White, male, cis composers, just not my thing." Now, her response is absolutely classic. Absolutely classic. Listen to what she says. She says this. First thing she does is she takes her hand and she slams it down on his left knee because the thing just keeps bouncing, which is reflective of somebody who is a nervous child and cannot handle things. because the knee was just going the whole time they're talking, and it's just going, bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So the first thing she does, she slams her hand on his knee to stop it. And she says this, which is just dropping truth bombs. She says, "Don't be so eager to be offended. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity." Absolutely correct. You find out in the movie, she got all kinds of issues and problems, whatever, but listen, truth is truth by virtue of what it is, not by who says it. You either recognize truth for what it is and say, yeah, that's the truth. And you can separate it from the person, because anybody can say truth. And that girl dropped the truth when she said that to that young man. And right after she says that, she says a whole bunch of other stuff. She gets up and starts walking around, because there's a whole bunch of other people in there. Not a whole bunch, but there's other young people and students in there. And she starts talking. And then at the very end of the scene, she says something to the young man, and it makes him so upset that he gets up off of the bench, grabs his stuff, calls her a profane name, and walks out, which is indicative and reflective of what somebody who doesn't have an argument will do. They'll start with the ad hominem attacks because they have no argument. This is what narcissism does. Narcissism focuses on the small things because there's a small mind behind it. Small minds focus on small things and make them into bigger things because they can't really handle the things that are really bigger. And that is what the current push of race representation in tabletop RPGs is founded upon. Now, I know that there are well-meaning people who take up these positions who have no malice. You know, they have no evil intent, but it's like I said, sins of ignorance are still sins. They're thinking that this is the thing. I mean, this sounds good. So they latch on to this facile mantra of race representation. And you got to understand why. It's everywhere. It's in film, television, it's in books. It's all over the place. So you can understand why they think, well, it's all over the place. It must be true, right? Huh? Okay. If you think like that, you are not thinking. You need to do your due diligence when you start hearing like quippy sayings or things that sound like they may be right, but you have to go deeper to find out exactly what it is about. And if you have been paying attention, there is this push to ram this position down our throats so you can just make it ubiquitous. And it's working. And the problem is that a whole bunch of people just don't want to push back because I don't want to, handle the drama. I don't want to mess with that drama. And I get it. That's why I do it. Especially for those of us who are in this space. I'll do it. I'll take the hits. Because this is my wheelhouse. I thrive here. That's why I do videos like this. Because this is facile, it's easy, and it feels good, it must be right. So minorities latch onto this because of that, not realizing that this is patronizing. It's patronizing. And Caucasians backpedal, and they're like, oh, well, it must be that too, because they're in fear. Because they just don't want to be called the trigger word, the trigger bomb, I should say, that people drop if you don't believe in it. And especially if you're a Caucasian, then you must be and I'm not going to say it again. Not right now. This is a bunch of patronizing nonsense. And you know why it's patronizing? Because what it says is that, oh, well, when it comes to tabletop RPGs, y'all people, you minorities, well, you just need our help. You're just creatively pitiful. You need our help. Po little Negro. Po little Mexicano. Po little Asian. We know. You're so pitiful. Creatively, We know your imagination just is not there. It's just not there. You need this in order for it to work. And we're going to help you out. We're going to be your white knight in shining armor on this one. Yeah, get out of my face with that nonsense. Go on somewhere. You ain't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. We do not need you to save us in a TTRPG or anything else. It's a game. And bringing that nonsense and attitude into this culture has done nothing but put a schism between a community that should be coming together more. But no, it's not, because we're focused on nonsense like this. And these people think they're doing a good thing. Like I said, there's a lot of people who repeat this, that there's no malice, but it's patronizing. I'm telling you it is. It's offensive. At the end of the day, it is you who are ethnically prejudiced. Or let me say it now. Let me say it. Let me say the word that everybody likes to use, but it's the wrong word. And I've covered this in my 2-video series, The Myth of the White and Black Race. So if you want to go over there and watch that video, those videos, you can after you get done watching this. But let's use a word that everybody knows. When you do this, you're the one who's the racist. Because you're just saying that we just don't have the imagination and creativity without representation. That's implied and can be inferred. And it's racist. Whether you do it in ignorance or whether you do it willfully, it is racist. Which would be why the methodology and motivation is evil. Of all 3 of these defective, evil, toxic traits, this one, for me, this is just for me, this one is the most odious. I can't stand it. Because this is what it does for people who others are trying to help. It makes them weak. It produces a collectivist, groupthink, totalitarian mindset. And that just makes people weak. What it's saying is that you are a victim. You need some help. And we gonna be the one to help you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Caucasian that's doing this, as if you actually know anything about that, or if you are a minority that's doing this. It's just weak. You're nothing but weak when you scream about it in the way that it's being screamed about today and in the way that it's being done. Again, motivation and methodology. This kind of weakness doesn't help people. It hurts them. Because what it says is that, oh, well, there's all these Eurocentric tabletop RPGs, and, well, because they're not in it, oh my goodness, well, they just can't handle it. It is causing some kind of emotional damage to these people mentally. Psychological violence. And this is wrong. All you're doing is promoting and projecting your weakness onto somebody else. Because what you're doing is saying that we are just going to have some kind of mental meltdown because we just don't have enough self-worth, and we need this. We need that kind of race representation. We need it. This next part that I have in my notes, I want to read it. I want to read it because, and this is something I wrote, but I do not want to miss and mess this up. So I'm just going to throw this up on the screen and I'm going to read it. If your worldview cannot uphold you enough to where you are rock solid in your identity, you're weak. And you need to reevaluate your worldview. If you seek affirmation of your identity in a tabletop RPG instead of more important and substantive sources, you're weak. It's a game. If every time you get together to play a tabletop RPG, you have to bring some activist agenda to the table, you are weak. You don't even know how to enjoy a game because of your deep insecurities. Why? Weak. This is not to say to have ethnic representation in tabletop RPGs is a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing when it's not an agenda. I mean, if that's part of the lore, or if that's just a natural part of the game, that's what you had it in to begin with. It's not something that's a token inclusion, which is why much of the film and art today is absolute garbage. You know, I haven't gone to see a movie and watched a film or, you know, movie in a new movie. Avengers Endgame, I think. That was it. And you could see that that was there at the very end of that. So I just stopped. I just watch older television shows when I want to watch television shows. I put in a movie DVD from my collection when I want to watch movies. I haven't watched any of the garbage today. None of it. Now, I can go on and say more things, but I don't want to make this too much longer, so let's continue. Ethnic representation in tabletop RPGs is ridiculous in many cases, and let's say you're playing Gamma World, or Mutant Year Zero, or something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What in the world would ethnic representation have to do with any of those? And I just gave you 3 of the many, many, many that are out there. What difference would it make? Why? And I haven't even gotten on the stupid subject of things like orcs are black people or representative of them. I'm going to kill that in another video, but I'm just mentioning it here as an example. Actually, it's supposed to be as an example, grammatically. And for those of you who are out there playing the game that I refuse to mention by name on this channel and complaining about it and demanding stuff, and the silly, stupid company who falls for that nonsense, listen, you've got choices here. You can go ahead and just, you know, play the type of character that you want to play because that is what you're supposed to do anyway. There's no hard and fast rules here. We all know when we get around the table, we just kind of make whoever we want to make, whatever character we want to make. We change things to what we want and we move on. It used to be a time back in the day where there weren't a lot of illustrations or anything like that in tabletop RPGs. And so you just had to go and be like, all right, well, yeah, let's use the imagination. And there you go. You just went on and you played. Nobody was thinking about that nonsense. But now you have it to where there's disclaimers under classic games and what they say as far as, oh, well, we don't agree with what this game is. Get out of here. So either change it in the game, or better yet, just play another game that has it in it if you're just that weak. But like I mentioned in the last video, Numenera has all kinds of minorities in terms of illustrations and stuff. And you want to know something? You still don't find a whole lot of them flocking to go and play the game. This destroys that whole argument of absolute nonsense. Now I got a question of the vid for you. What do you think is the most egregious of these 3? Or if you think that I haven't covered one, I want to know what it is and I want you to put it in the comments below. I want us to think hard and long about this, because this is not doing any of us any good whatsoever. So that's it, folks. That's me on my rant. And go ahead and start either flaming me or unsubscribing because I know it's coming. I know it's coming. It's one of those videos that, it is what it is. But you want to know something? I care too much about, number 1, the hobby, and number 2, the many, many people who love the hobby and how it is being maligned right now, and how people are being maligned unjustly. Yeah, I can't sit by and just like not say anything. I'm not going to. Well, if you enjoyed what I was talking about today, then show a little YouTube algorithm love by crushing the like button. And if it was enough to have you stick around, because I know that, well, it probably made most of you want to run. But it is what it is. But if you still want to stick around, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because even if the notification bell doesn't work like it is supposed to, or that you would think it would work, it's still gonna show you some of my videos. So hey, that's cool to me. Watch more videos, more videos, and more videos on the channel. Well, that's gonna do it for me, folks. I'm about to
exit stage left.
And if you want to see part 1 of this, then here's the video on that. So until next time, folks, peace and hair grease. 5,000 leets. A brother is outie.